a certain level of healthy xenophobia that does exist. Yeah. I mean, I'm willing
There's
to
a healthy
you can attack it
xenophobia.
if you want. Yeah, healthy xenophobia. Yeah.
All right, I want to hear it. What is what would be a healthy xenophobia? Walk me through it.
Okay, I think a healthy xenophobia is a healthy respect for your culture and your country and your community.
It's the beginning of the show.
You are on the line with First Amender.
Hello, how are you doing?
What do you want to talk about? How you doing? I'm doing good.
Doing all right. I just want to talk about immigration. I think that's the big issue, not right now, ever since kind of the LA riots went into the background, but I think it is the biggest and most important issue in this country right now.
Okay. Why don't you tell me your position regarding immigration? I'd love to.
All righty. Well, I think my issue with immigration, why I think it is so important, I'm no historian. I used to study it in college, but I was particularly interested in civilization, rise and fall, and how they progressed throughout history. And one of the constant things I noticed, right, and this goes to Rome, this goes to like the Bulgarians in Hungary before the Magyars came in like the 1000s. What you see constantly is through time, a certain ethnic group that settles in a land will go there, settle, create civilization, and then over time, as it decays, it becomes weak. A new stronger group comes in and resettles it. And that's what I fear is happening in America today. I think we are in a state of civilizational decline, and I think we do not have the same, national, I guess, vitality would be the word I'm looking for, to where we are allowing ourselves to, basically be, replaced. And I'm worried that if integration does not happen, assimilation, I should say, that we're going to see a situation where eventually, as the central government of America kind of weakens, just naturally over time, because that's just how history works, governments, grow and wane in power, that you're going to see, like, areas in the Southwest where Hispanic population is, kind of more prevalent, begin to splinter off into their own, countries.
So is your argument that by having immigration, therefore, the civilization can degrade and get and it basically falters?
In the way that it's conducted now, I think the problem is that because the immigration is so concentrated in certain areas, and that the cultures that settle there are so close to their mother countries, right? Right across the border. It's not like in the 1800s where you had people cross an ocean and they were kind of disconnected from their homelands. Their homelands are just right across, skip and hop across the border. So I think with that's the main concern, because I think, at least for right now, they are more, and I think you see this with the LA riots, is that they are more connected to their mother countries right now than they are to, America and the American identity.
Okay, I mean, you feel like society is going to collapse if we don't.
Well, I'm not one of these. I'm not one of these guys. Oh, the West is going to fall. I'm not one of those people. I'm more saying that it's inevitable over time. It could happen 100, 200, 300 years. It can happen on any time frame. But I'm just saying that the way it's happening now, in the sense of the way the immigration, is playing out, it's setting up for consequences down the line.
Typically speaking, I feel like that the reason why civilizations rise and fall is not due to immigrants. In fact, I would probably be fair to say that the exact opposite can be the case.
I would be interested to see what example that would be.
During the civilization's growth of the Roman Empire, they absorbed countless peoples and cultures. They integrated
they conquered it. That's
so
different.
many like military, like the you can, for example, like as the Abbasid Caliphate, right? That's like a crap ton of Arabs and Persians and Turks, and they
But the
basically,
Abbasid
those are people
Empire
that
eventually
contributed
fell.
to the Islamic Golden Age. It's just an example.
Okay,
right?
okay.
I guess like
But
my
the
concern
Abbasid
is
Caliphate.
you got to let me finish. I let you finish. You got
Sorry,
to
I
be able to
apologize.
listen to
You
me.
go ahead. I apologize.
I just feel that, and then I can also bring up the United States as a good example. We absorbed all sorts of different cultures. We're now the most powerful country in the world, and we have the most powerful military of all time. I mean, like this idea that it's like this, that by having immigration, it reduces the overall strength. I completely disagree with that. I think like if you have corruption, weak governance, if you have an economic collapse or maybe like a reduction of overall resources through environmental change, if you have consistent wars and invasions, I think like if you overextend your military, those are things that would cause countries to fall, not immigration.
All right. Are you finished with your point?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 3 points to kind of counter that. One, when you mentioned that, immigration itself is not the sole reason for decline. I'm not that, I would never argue that. There are many factors that go into it. Like you say, like corruption, like the spread of disease, why, the degradation and social value. All that does come into it, and you're right about that. My point is that immigration is, in my view, an aggregating factor in the sense of it doesn't cause the problem, but it being present and it being, again, like I said, so concentrated in the cases that we're talking about now, it is,
You're saying it's a contributing factor.
It will become a, I think, a problem down the line again once, we start to fray.
So
as a
would you say it would become a contributing factor?
It would become a contributing factor, yes. And can I finish my 2 points real quick before for the rebuttal, if that's fine? I'm
not rebutting. I was just asking for a clarification, but go ahead and continue.
Oh, yeah, I apologize. Yeah, then yes, I do think it would be a contributing factor. As for my second point, you bring up some examples, like you say the Roman Empire and the Abbasids. What I would say, though, that those were, when they absorbed those civilizations, they were very young civilizations. They were in their conquering phase. An example, like with Rome, right? You saw them absorb cultures, right? Now, it's different. It's not easy to paint with a broad brush. Like, for example, the Romans were more similar culturally to the Greeks than, they were to the Gauls, right? So integration and assimilation in that cases were very different. However, and particularly this is the case with the Abbasid Caliphate, you look at the examples there. It was the Rashiduns that conquered, the Rashiduns and the Umayyads that conquered, the great Islamic empire at the time and the Islamic Golden Age. The Abbasids were kind of like the last hurrah before it kind of collapsed, the whole entire project. But you see in the example of the Abbasids is as time went on, it has been, those conquered groups that you say got assimilated, ended up breaking away. You had the Umayyads, the resurgence of the Umayyads in Spain, in Al-Andalus. You have like the Fatimids that were in, North Africa. And eventually, it did kind of this gray. It's not really that the Arabs in that sense, and that's something I think a lot of people get mistake about the Arab world. It's not really all Arabs, right? You have like the North Africans who would consider themselves separate and more connected to their Berber identity than they would, be connected to an Arab identity. An Egyptian would identify as an Egyptian first before an Arab, right? And it goes on so and so forth. But, I would not point to those as examples of successful integration to, that yes, it did spread their language, but there hasn't been a united Arab caliphate since, the Abbasids fell in what would it be, about like 1000? I mean, and ever since then, the Arabs have been divided into, different subgroups and haven't been able to unite in that sense. So I wouldn't say that it is, an example of a successful integration story. What was my third? I can't remember my third point. But yeah, those are kind of my two counter arguments against that.
I mean, again, like during
okay, yeah, I did remember it.
the Roman Golden Age, right? They brought in all sorts of different cultures. I mean, it's not just the Greeks. I don't know where you're getting that.
Well, I know I didn't say it was just
That they grabbed specifically people that
the
upheld
Romans
their
conquered.
specific worldview. You had Etrusans,
I said the
Samnites,
Romans
you had
conquered.
Gauls, Iberians.
I said the Gauls. I said that
Yeah, okay.
Roman
So
had
then
conquered
that's
these.
that would be a strong rebuttal saying that if you
No,
have
it wouldn't be because
this
you're not
only
addressing
works
the
if
point.
you
The point
if you allow if there's a back and forth. Like I said, I don't know. I let you finish.
I'm sorry. I'm a bit hot and heavy right now. Forgive me. But
Rome obviously took in many different people with many different values, and they effectively made them Roman citizens. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Okay, I would agree with that.
And that was during the Golden Age that was happening, correct?
During the Golden Age, yes, that was happening.
Okay.
However, we're not in a Golden Age in America anymore. And what you're seeing is like
again, dude.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm pointing out that is a direct rebuttal to your argument that by saying immigration, that is a contributing factor, right? Rather than looking at like the numerous reasons why the Roman Empire fell, right? From corruption, economic collapse, they stretched too far out. There's all sorts of different reasons, right? And I guess you could say that it was additionally barbarians. Maybe you would have an argument, but here's the problem, okay, with your argument is there are lots of different cultures that have adopted other cultures or have included them in a particular society. It does not necessitate that it contributes to the collapse. In fact, the exact opposite can happen. It can actually become stronger. The United States is a really good example of that, right? And the Roman Empire is also a very good example of that.
Okay. I would say to that, you addressed that, yes, Romans did absorb immigrants during their golden age. My rebuttal to that would be is that America is not in this golden age. Cultures can assimilate groups when the culture is strong and vibrant. When the culture is in decline, it cannot assimilate groups, and that is what we're seeing as we were more successfully able to integrate groups like the Italians, like the Irish, like them in the 1800s. We are not as strong as a culture now as we were then. And instead, you see these ethnic in the southern border, in the Southwest. You see, these. It's not as if they're assimilating; they are staying in their communities in the Southwest and basically building up an ethnic state in that area. Right, because and it's not like they are going into your average white your average Ohio suburb and integrating that way. It's just not happening like that. And what's going to happen, and what I say is that you talk about those contributing factors, those other contributing factors, and probably direct factors like corruption, like the state collapse, like the factors of civilizational decline. What you bring up the example of the barbarians, right, and the German barbarians. It wasn't that they couldn't integrate them. It's just that they stuck together as a group. And then when the state decline did happen, you had them basically emerge as a polity because they settled in a certain area. And when the state got weak enough, they basically created their own states out of the ashes. That's my point. When America gets to that point, we will see the kind of breakaway states. But that's my main point, is that you can, as a young civilization that is strong and vibrant, and the example of Rome, they conquered most of these groups, like I said, like the Gauls, like the Greeks, like the Syrians, like the Egyptians, like the Iberians in Spain, and like the Brits, right? They were able to conquer these people and assimilate them into the stronger culture. But when the Roman culture got weak, it became susceptible for ethnic migration. The Anglo-Saxons, for example, right? Those are a Germanic group, right? They went into England and conquered England, right? They settled England first, and then when the Romans abandoned Britain, they, basically created their own kingdoms and pushed, the native Britons into Wales, right? As time went on.
Well, like, okay, you're saying that, they're just going to be a creation of their own enclaves, and they're just going to not assimilate at all and create their own states. Is that would you say, is that true among Italians?
Well, no, it wasn't true.
Okay, what about Irish? Is that true among Irish?
No, but that's
okay. What about Chinese? Is that true among Chinese?
You can say it's true for the Chinese.
Really?
The Chinese have, yeah. I mean, like that's
got
what
news for you,
Chinatown
man.
is.
I see Chinese all over the place in the United States. Where's the enclave?
San Francisco, West Coast.
The Chinese are sitting
Seattle.
there in San Francisco. I'm here in Florida and I see Chinese people. What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, to be fair, they're visiting Florida for Disneyland.
What? No, I see Chinese people live in Florida. Also, I find your argument that it's like we just show up as enclaves. I'm just gonna like to me, it sounds to me that this is deeply rooted in I don't know I would say it's probably ignorance, because you actually have no idea what you're talking about.
Really, I don't.
Because you're sitting here and you're talking to a Chilean whose both parents are Chilean.
Did your parents?
And
come
it's
over
like, I got
after
news for
the
you,
change
man.
of
We're
power?
not looking to settle into enclaves. No, we're looking to become Americans. What do you mean? We want to be American.
I mean, in the sense of you look at what's happened in LA with them waving Mexican flags. Those are people who
why
are
do you
more
think they're
connected to
waving
their
Mexican
identity.
flags? Do you think it's to make their own
Because
state?
they're more connected to that identity than they are to the
what
American
they're connected to is establishing the right for Mexicans. That's why they have that flag.
the rights to Mexico.
Yeah, the right of Mexicans to exist in the United States. Yes.
They can exist in the United States. Many of them do, but this is not the example of that. They are, in this example, right, in LA,
so just
they
to be
are
clear,
right across the border from Mexico.
So just to be clear, I want to be clear, right?
Yes.
They
100%.
don't
Go ahead.
want to live as an American. They actually want their own Mexican enclave in the United States. Is that your position?
Yes, that's my position.
You're out of your fucking mind.
And you see,
I've
really,
zero. I have zero indication of that. If anything, I would probably argue all they want is to be treated like every old average, everyday, ordinary citizen. That's what I would say. I think you're woefully incorrect. And your overgeneralization, I'm just going to tell you, I'm just going to say it really is deeply offensive. It really is. And I don't normally say that because, but as a Chilean, when we came to America, we thought that we're going to live a better life. We won't have to suffer as much. And things can get better, and it's like, and you're sitting there saying, "Well, these Chileans, they're just, they could just make an enclave."
I can acknowledge.
No, you said specifically towards immigrants. You said stop. You said specifically towards immigrants. Okay,
I said the way
my parents are immigrants. Now what? Are we not good enough for you?
No, not at all.
Why?
You are. No, hold on.
Where's my enclave? Where's my Chilean enclave?
You don't have one because there isn't the same. There's not the same.
You think there's not a lot of Chileans here in the United States?
Chileans into.
You think there's not a lot of Chileans in the United States? I got news for you. There's more than you think.
To the numbers.
The only difference is the reason why you don't see Chileans is because we look white. When you look at us. We look white. Everything about us, you would not be able to tell the difference between a Chilean and an average, everyday, ordinary American. You wouldn't. And so that's why you don't seem to see that there's a lot of Chileans. But you do, however, happen to see Mexicans because they don't look white.
Well, that's not true. There are some Mexicans that do look white.
Yeah, sure. But most Mexicans don't look white. What is this?
What do you mean, what is this?
dude, immigrants don't want to make
they're brown,
enclaves.
that's my problem. If they were white,
right?
it would be the same
closest
thing
that you've got to like an enclave would be like a New York City, like Little Italy or like, Germantown or Chinatown. But the reality is that, dude, in the 1800s, stop talking. The reality is in the 1800s, they had this idea that they would just live in those enclaves and they would never assimilate. Today, fully Americanized. They all speak English. They are in different areas, not just Germantown, Chinatown, and Italy, Little Italy. They're all over New York. In fact, they're all over the United States. So this idea that they just stay in their little enclaves, number one, it's incorrect. Number two, it's racist as fuck. Ew.
I never said that they stay. Listen, I said specifically that it is different in that case than it is in the modern case. I'm not saying that it is something inherent to their race. I am saying that when, like you see in the example of today on the southern border, what do you see? Okay, you see this collection of communities on the border that are more connected to their national identities and their, because they are so close to where they originated from. Right, as opposed to the examples that you mentioned, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, that came from further away, that came from disconnected areas, that are out of mind, out of presence, right? For in the American context, right? In the example of like Italy, or in the example of like Irish. I'm an Irish. I come from an Irish family, right? But my point being is, though, once we got to the United States, where's
your state, your personal own state? Why aren't you hanging out with a bunch of Irish people and speaking Gaelic
my family
enjoying?
Came to this country from County Wexford in like 1840.
All right, how about this? Right, I think it's probably fair to say that it's normal for ethnic people to cluster. And it kind of makes sense, right? You're around your family, you're around people that speak your language. Every immigrant group does this at first. It's economically safer. It is socially supportive, right? Fair enough. Like, could you imagine if you moved to China? Do you honestly think that you would not find it quite comfortable to go to like an American neighborhood or something? Like people speaking English as opposed to like Mandarin. Look at it from their perspective. But the reality is like second and third generation, they're largely assimilated. There's statistics that show over 80% of second generation Latinos, they speak English fluently, right? Here I am. I'm second generation. I don't have an issue with my English. I can speak just fine. I don't even have an accent for that matter. So, there's also the fact that most groups even intermarry outside of their ethnic group, right? And so that would be especially by the third generation. So it's like this idea that it's like, oh, they're just going to make their own like enclave and it's going to stay. I think you couldn't be more wrong. History doesn't show that and the facts don't show that.
I think the history does show that to a certain extent. I'm saying
I don't know what else to tell you, man. I mean, at this point you're going against basic facts. But I'll let you have your rebuttal. Go ahead.
I am not saying, like I said, I'm not saying that it is something inherent to a group. I am saying that when a group in large numbers goes and concentrates in a, small, in a certain area of a nation, right? In the sense of, and like I said, in South Texas, stretching, across, New Mexico and Arizona and all that, and in that area, right? And what you see is that these communities are predominantly, like 90% from, Latin American countries, Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, in these places. And they are in these communities, and they are staying in these communities, and they're not integrating. That is my fear. If you are right.
You're wrong.
Right.
Have you not seen Mexicans in your area?
Yes, I have.
Do they speak English?
Most of them.
Okay, so they are integrated.
I mean, they are sending money back to Mexico, by and large.
Are you saying that they're pulling money out of circulation, effectively increasing every dollar that is in your pocket?
You want to have an argument about how the American dollar being a reserve currency is not necessarily a good thing? I'm willing to have that argument.
Not really. It's a non sequitur, but the point is that it is good for the economy when there's a lot of confidence in the U.S. dollar. So when people are taking money out from the United States, that's not actually a negative for you. That's actually a good thing.
But it's not in circulation in the United States, though. And it
decreases
our...
Yeah, no, that increases the value of every dollar you hold.
It's not, again, that's not necessarily because...
That's
again,
a good thing for you.
If you had a weaker dollar, right? I'm not an economist. This isn't my area.
No, hold on. If more people are holding dollars, that would mean it's stronger, not weaker. If everybody is trying to get rid of their dollars, that would be a weaker dollar. Yes.
I think there are some benefits to having a weaker dollar as opposed to a stronger
Oh my
dollar.
God, look at this, man. This fucking pivot. I can't believe it.
No, it's not a pivot. I mean, we can go back to the immigration stuff. That's not a problem.
No. You're what you just said. I said that actually makes the dollar stronger, not weaker. And then your pivot was, I think there's benefits to having a weaker dollar instead of a stronger dollar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you are admitting that it is that when people pull money out of the U.S. economy and go spend it in other countries, that it would make it a stronger dollar.
Yes.
Okay, so then we don't disagree. It makes the dollar stronger. It's better for you.
Okay, sorry. I just kind of I'm sorry. I misunderstood your point. That's my bad. All right. Well, I'm willing to let you have the floor if you want to put on an argument. Anything else. I think we're just going to kind of clash here.
I think you need to rethink what you consider to be the United States. I think you should look at, what it means to uphold basic inalienable rights for individuals, which would include for immigrants. I think you need to consider what are the negative implications of, say, what are the negative implications concerning when we want to take away rights of immigrants, or instances where immigrants want to work, but because they are an illegal immigrant, that businesses can take advantage of these workers. These are all huge problems, and a lot of people just a lot of people just kind of totally ignore that. They just.
I 100% agree. I think with your last point, that they do take advantage of illegal immigration, and that is why I'm opposed to illegal immigration, a part of it. I mean, it hurts both people, and that's why I'm not like a doctrinaire, free market Republican. I think that there should be heavy restriction. I think we should use E-Verify. I think we should use all this stuff. I don't think it's right, again, to import this population, disconnect them from their homelands, and then to, have them work for pennies on the dollars.
Hold on. So are you arguing better working conditions and worker rights for immigrants? Dude, based. Right. High five.
Okay, 5-5. Yes. No, I mean, I don't agree. I agree that, again.
Okay, so establish greater worker rights.
I'm more left-wing economically.
Let's make make them citizens.
I disagree. No.
Wait, why?
Not illegal immigrants. Because I don't think they should be here in the first place.
Really? Why not?
Illegal immigration? Because again, I think that to a certain one, like I said, even if they are legal immigrants, they will still work for a lower rate. Two, I think that again, from a perspective, I think high levels of immigration makes the country weaker for reasons we've already discussed.
You think increasing your workforce makes the country weaker? Why don't you make that circle fit into a square for me?
Because again, it decreases the wages overall in the country. It makes quality of life worse in
You don't think that they're fulfilling particular niches that the native population does not fulfill?
They would work it if they got better wages for it, which the foreign labor are undercutting.
Great, fabulous. Let's make them citizens so that way they can get proper worker rights. Based. Whoa, totally agree. Couldn't agree with you more.
No, I don't agree. I don't think we should make them
not
citizens,
the worker rights
because
thing.
we would be incentivizing that behavior, and that's not right.
Well, so I think that the problem exists regarding illegal immigration. The problem is not what Republicans say it is. The problem is that we have made it harder and harder to become a citizen of the United States. A lot of Republicans will sit there and say that if you want to become a citizen of the United States, get in line. Well, that would be great. Point me to the line. A line doesn't exist. We've literally closed it off. We've made it so difficult and so convoluted that it's basically impossible. And don't worry, it's not just Republicans that did it. Democrats did it also. It happened under Clinton, it happened under Obama, and it especially happened under Republicans.
And I think
They
that's
loved
from the Democrats,
increasing.
the party.
They loved increasing the fields of entry, which ultimately, by making it more convoluted and confusing, and how that there is effectively no pathway to immigration, and people often vote with their feet, what ends up happening is that you're going to have an X amount of illegal immigrants. I think that it shows a stunning injustice on the system, not on the actual them becoming illegals. If for example, if it was illegal,
on the problem,
if it was illegal, like if it was illegal to say drink soda, I would probably, it would probably be fair to say that there would be more people going to jail for drinking soda. I would also venture to say that likely the fault isn't the people that like to drink soda. It's the fact that we created a stupid rule that makes it illegal to drink soda. Do you see my point?
Okay.
The problem is the law, not the people that are just going to a path of least resistance.
I do want to address that point, though, real quick, if it's fine. With the soda example, we can exchange out with the like the soda. That's the example you're using. Like with that particular example, I would agree. However, there are certain behaviors and certain things in and certain products in society, hard drugs, illegal immigration in this case, where we want to set an example because we don't want people to do it. So we want to accept a hard example. We basically throw the book to show that, hey, don't do this stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, again, if you make it easier to become a citizen of the United States, you would just have less illegal immigrants. It's effectively like if you have a road,
but that's not fixing the problem.
And there's like a curve along the road.
A new label on the problem saying they're legal.
And it's like if you have like a road and you have a curve along the road, and then on the other side of the road it's a cliff, and there's like an X amount of people that careen off the cliff. I would say, hey, we should have a guardrail, so that way people don't. And they said, well, it's actually their fault, right? Because they weren't looking. But it's like, if there's an X amount of people dying because of, some stupid thing, just fix the system, the road, right? As opposed to like blame the people that are just going to path of least resistance.
No, I mean, but that's not an equivalent example. Like,
no, I think it's very equivalent.
In the road,
right? I'm saying that we had less illegal immigrants when under the Reagan administration, because they had a valid pathway to citizenship. Regular individuals could initiate into the law and become a citizen of that country, right? But we've made it more and more convoluted, and now it is so convoluted that there is no line. But guess what? There are still asylum seeking clauses, which is based off of the international court standard, which is the case for just about every single country. Are you kidding me,
I don't think
man?
we should hand over sovereignty to another international body. I think that's global.
Yeah, well, it's also part of the Geneva Convention. So just so you're aware. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. At the end of this, after everything is said and done, the laws that have been put in place that make it harder to become a citizen of the United States is ultimately based on xenophobia and racism. Yeah, I would go that far. 100%. 100%. What do you think about that?
Okay, I think to an extent there is a certain level of healthy xenophobia that does exist. yeah. I mean, I'm
there's a healthy xenophobia.
If you want. Yeah, healthy xenophobia. Yeah.
All right, I want to hear it. What is what would be a healthy xenophobia? Walk me through it.
Okay, I think a healthy xenophobia is a healthy respect for your culture and your country and your community. I think a healthy level of xenophobia is you don't want, if you come up in a place, if you value that community, that culture, that place, if you have value in that, you shouldn't want new people to come in and change it. I'm sorry, I just agree with that.
As opposed to what? When you keep the same people in the culture and then ultimately ends up changing anyway because time changes and you have new generations of people.
But that would be
it's literally just shitty xenophobia and treating people like garbage because they're not part of your community.
Yeah, that would be consented among the people of that culture. So it would be more valid than just having a foreign-born population move in. Yeah.
I think I love that I pointed out the intent is ultimately xenophobia, and then you said that there is a healthy xenophobia. I got news for you, man. There is no such thing as a healthy xenophobia.
You asked if
xenophobia just means stop.
Okay, go ahead.
There is no healthy xenophobia. There is fear or hatred of foreigners and strangers. You're calling it healthy is like saying healthy racism, right? You care about your culture or community. You can care about a culture or community without a fear or resentment of others. That fear or resentment, that's not a good feeling. That is a negative feeling.
I mean, pride is, people would consider pride a sin, I guess, right? But
we're not talking about pride. We're talking about there is no healthy xenophobia.
Where do you think things like racism and xenophobia come from? Right?
I think that there is a
pride
inherent
or over-pride in
I think there is an inherent tribalism that is very old and it's very basal. It is an immediate response to something that is unfamiliar. People tend to not like things that are unfamiliar to them. And I think that we do lots of things to escape basal understanding to go into higher thinking, right? We're not banging two sticks together. We're trying to figure out how to get a rocket with people to Mars, right? We involve ourselves in higher thinking so that way we can establish better overall societies. And I think that xenophobia, I'll agree with you that it is very basal, but it's not something that you should uphold like any of this other stuff. It's ultimately just a basal wanting to restrict yourself from other cultures, and there's nothing wrong with these other cultures. Cultures always evolve. You do not preserve a culture by freezing it. You preserve it by living it, sharing it, and letting it breathe.
Okay, can I rebut to a certain extent to your base point about this is the basal nature of humanity and how we need to move beyond it? I disagree. I think that yes, we do need I do encourage development. However, we shouldn't just forget and cast aside ancient wisdom that has kept our species alive since we came since we began, right?
This is a naturalistic fallacy.
Things
We did it in the past, therefore we should do it in the future. It's a naturalistic fallacy.
Yes.
It doesn't explain why we ought.
It's a fallacy. You can put a label on a fallacy on anything.
Yeah, it's incorrect. It's wrong. It's just wrong.
No, it's
I don't know what to tell you.
How is it wrong? How is it wrong to say, okay, over
I
time
explained
we learned
how.
a lesson?
I literally explained it very clearly how it's wrong.
That's not wrong.
Yeah, it is fallacious. You apply a naturalistic fallacy and say we've done it in the past, therefore it's right. That's a fallacy. That's incorrect.
Yes,
that's faulty logical reasoning. Use your brain.
People took out loans to take out stocks before the 1929 stock market crash, and we learned, hey, maybe that's not a good idea. Was that a logical fallacy too? I mean, that's a learned lesson.
No, we still do that today. What are you talking about?
And it's bad, and we shouldn't do it. And we should learn from our
lessons.
That's a different
discussion. That's a different discussion entirely. You don't have an argument for your xenophobia. I still don't understand. What's an example of good xenophobia? That is the most wild thing I've heard all week.
What was that? Sorry, repeat.
That is the most wild thing I've heard all week. I'm just curious. Have you ever sat down at your Thanksgiving dinner table and said to people, hey, you know what? A healthy amount of xenophobia is wanting to preserve your own culture.
No, because politics is impolite to bring up in polite company.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's also one of the most wild things I've ever heard.
I mean, that's just what I believe, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
It's just
get
what
you believe
I
it. Rethink that. Spend more time reading. Get yourself immersed in other
I read
cultures.
all the
Usually
time,
when people are xenophobic like this, they often don't involve themselves in different cultures. Go out and sit down at a Mexican restaurant. Go talk to Mexican people. Go hang out with get a Mexican friend. Right? You'll find that they ain't so bad, bro. It's not that bad. Tacos are pretty tasty.
I went to an HBCU. Don't even go there with me. I'll go out and hang out.
Yeah, go hang out more. Like, stop like with the weird racism. Yeah.
It's not weird to sit there and say,
no, it is
like
weird.
My
it is
culture
weird.
And I want to defend it from being changed. It's not weird, bro.
What cultures change whether or not you decide to like force it in a box and try to get it to change versus not.
The culture
That's not a good thing. No, the culture. I'm just saying cultures change. This idea that it's like, oh, we got to preserve our culture is fucking racist, dude.
Sorry if that's what you think, man, but
it's not what I think. That's empirically the fact. You're basically saying, "Oh, well, I got to preserve my culture while also fuck brown people." Like, whatever, dude.
That's not. When did I say fuck brown people, bro?
What?
It doesn't matter.
Unironically what is happening. You want to revoke basic inalienable rights for Mexican immigrants. You've also said that they shouldn't be able to work into the country. They should basically be seen as criminals. You said, and then I brought up. You realize. The only reason why these laws were brought in to begin with was because of xenophobia. And then you said, well, I think that's healthy xenophobia. What the fuck ever, dude. Racist.
Okay, you can call it what it is. But I mean, I think in the long run, when you look back at 1,000 years, I think that people wanting to defend their culture is not a bad thing. I'm sorry. That's just what I think that's how it is. I'm sorry.
All right.
I mean, I hope I gave you an exciting conversation, if nothing less.
You sure did.
If I call you at some point in the future, down the line, would you take the call?
Of course. I take anybody who wants to call.
All right. Well, I appreciate you talking with me about it,
Yep, no problem.
I hope that you have a wonderful day and take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Goodbye.